I find that's very true in life. The more learning mindset we have, the better off we are. Growth is super expensive. A lot of people
Yeah.
don't understand the
Yeah.
cost of growth, the cost to get to, the cost to go from, let's say, a $500,000 to a $2 million company, and the staffing, the resources to get there is expensive.
Yeah.
Because the most expensive cost, most people don't really understand the cost. Like, until you get bigger in labor costs, you don't understand the cost of training an individual is very high.
All right, welcome everybody to Albi After Hours live podcast. This is going to be episode 3, and I'm super, super excited for this one. Funny thing, for those of you wondering why episode 3 is now just coming out, well, we can't count here at Albiware, so we actually ended up counting the episodes, and we skipped episode 3, and now magically we're like, wait a minute, we forgot episode 3. So I'm super excited. I'm here with Greg, the CEO of SFY Solutions. SFY, yes, I can pronounce it, I promise. And today's podcast is going to be really cool because we're going to talk about overcoming the small business mindset and how that's a huge problem within restoration. And I jam with that big time. But before we get to talk about that, I want us to get to know Greg very well. Him and I have gone back for a couple of years. We reconnected at a conference at the Experience in Vegas, and we wanted to do this podcast together. So Greg, welcome. I'm excited.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on board. It's always interesting watching people's journey and where they come from and their backgrounds. Like for myself, like I used to own and operate a roofing company for about 8 years here in Denver, and I sold that company. In the midst of selling that company, I started SFY with my partner, and it was just an interesting time. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever sold a company or anything, but it's pretty exciting. A lot of myth that you kind of think on how you sell a company is just different. And going through that process and keeping quiet about that process from your staff, because you need your staff to go with the sale of your company. So you have to keep that quiet until you actually are pretty much about ready to close the deal and do the introduction. But got SFY up and running. We've been up and running now for about 7 years or so. We have about a team of, let's say, about 65 people on staff.
Awesome.
That help write estimates and do all that type of stuff. And we started actually writing estimates in the roofing space because that's where I came from. And then we started getting a lot of people interested in us writing estimates in the water space. So we started looking at what that would look like. We actually started the last quarter of 2019, but then COVID hit and pretty much shut down everything. So it was a little hard for us breaking in out of the gate, but we finally are in the space writing and doing all that type of stuff. So that's kind of a quick snapshot of how we got here into the water space and writing estimates and helping the contractors become more efficient.
Got it. So I'm going to take a couple steps back because I'm really interested on people's journeys, right? So you said you started that roofing company within Denver. How in the world did you even end up in roofing?
Yeah, so this is even a fun story. So my original background was I was a mortgage broker. So I was a mortgage broker for a long time, and then the mortgage collapsed, and I made good money being a mortgage broker. So when you leave making good money and you need to go replace that job, and the mortgage space fell, it took a second to figure out where you were going to land. So I was working 2 different jobs to make up the same type of income I was before, and so I did cold calls. So I did cold calls up in New York selling energy, and then I did a direct buy membership wholesale buying club. So like Decision Today, kind of like a timeshare thing.
Got it.
And so I'm working 90 hours a week, working 2 jobs. And a buddy of mine's in roofing, and he is slammed busy with work. Just entirely slammed. And so I'm chit-chatting back and forth, and I was like, hey, look, why don't I do this? Why don't I take off a week off both jobs, and I'll work with you for a full week. You don't have to pay me. Like, I need, if I'm interested in moving, I really need to see what you do from the day-to-day operation of this roofing thing. And I knew nothing about the insurance side of it or hail claims or anything like that. So took an entire day off, rode with him. for a whole week, and we got up at like 6 in the morning,
Oh wow.
sometimes 5, to make your adjuster appointments in the morning, and
Yep.
then we have to meet clients in the evening. So we're leaving part of town that we were working at like 10, 11 o'clock at night,
Wow.
and and just doing that and just grinding. And I'll never forget getting in this truck, and there's just, I mean, there's food bags, everything everywhere, just like fast food stuff. And then then I see these notes, like just handwritten notes with names and phone numbers all over the place, like on napkins, on like the back of like a McDonald's bag, like on just, and I'm sitting here just kind of like that stuff looks kind of important, but I'm not totally sure like what's going on. And so, and I kind of like, I don't know, I'm not like a super clean freak, but like, it was like, it was all that clutter was kind of annoying me. And I brought like a little notepad, and I was like, so he went out to do this adjuster appointment. I'm still 100% new. He's up on the roof with the adjuster. I have no interest in getting on the roof. It's just not at this, especially at this time. And so I kind of wait in the truck. So while I'm in the truck, I'm trying to figure out what to do. So I'm grabbing all his trash, that literally all this notes on his trash, and I'm writing it like name, phone number on all the trash, and I'm putting it like in this bag I found, and just collecting. I get like a list. There's like 30 names, maybe 40 names and phone numbers I found written on all this stuff, like just everything. Like, and I kind of put it in the thing. He gets in the truck and he like, bro, dude, like I need that stuff, right? And I'm like, bro, like, yeah, okay, so let's like, I put it in the bag here. It's all here. So if you still need it, it's still available for you to get through this big bag. It's just kind of not cluttered around me. And then I took all the names and numbers, just put them on a piece of paper. So there's like just one little spot, like, and then I kind of helped him then, kind of figured out what his schedule was like. And I helped him book a bunch of appointments and follow up. I mean, there were just leads. There were hot leads that needed roof inspections. And so after the end of the week, I said, I quit my 2 jobs, said I would work with him. And I worked with him and this other company for about 6 months. I learned everything about the business pretty much, and I started my own roof company after that. I just realized the current owner really didn't, I don't know. I didn't feel like he was running the company very well. So,
Got it.
So then I started. That's literally how I got into the roofing space.
And how was that transition from like white collar mortgage broker to blue collar, and now you're in a truck running around houses?
Yeah. So there's one thing I definitely thoroughly enjoy is I don't have to wear like a suit or like a tie, slacks, super nice dress shorts, or like slacks and all the like just you get all your stuff dry cleaned and pressed, and I mean you're just constantly in it. So I thoroughly love not dressing up like that. I like the casual side of it. I enjoy it a little bit more because you're a little bit more customer interaction, and I enjoyed the office side as well as being out in the field. So I did both and helping both sides of it. So I really enjoyed both sides of that type of stuff. Just it's different work. Now I'm also not afraid to like work. I did some construction stuff and some of those other things before I got into mortgage, but
Got it.
it was definitely a little adjustment because I thought I was going to be a mortgage broker for the rest of my life.
Got it. I see. And then the market said otherwise, right?
Yeah. When all the banks closed, I think it was like over 300 mortgage companies folded.
Yep.
I was like, I think I got out when there was like 180 folded. I was like, okay, it's time to find a new career. Like this isn't gonna sustain.
Yeah. Cool. So let's talk more about SFY. Like, first of all, what does SFY stand for those of you who don't know?
Yeah. So SFY stands Solutions for You.
Cool.
I'm in names. I'm a big guy at keeping names really short. So it's just kind of like my roofing company was G2 Roofing, like just real short, like simple letters, on that type of side. What do we do? Right. So we write insurance estimates or estimates in Xactimate for contractors, and in the roofing or rebuild side, we will go through, take an initial scope of loss from the insurance company, go through, see what's missing, and then we'll call the insurance company and defend the items that we're missing and get other supplements approved. And then in the, when you're doing mold remediation or water extraction type projects, we'll help write you the invoice that you're going to send to the carrier. And then if you need us to go defend that, we'll also defend that estimate for you as well.
Got it. Awesome.
And it's just kind of helps speed up the process and time.
Got it. I assume you guys use Xactimate
Yep.
primarily.
Yeah, Xactimate
Do you
currently
guys
right
use
now. I know
Symbility too, or now just mostly
not
Xactimate?
yet. I mean, there's talks of potentially doing that. There's not a lot of training courses for Xactimate, so whoever
For
you
Symbility, you mean? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for Symbility. For Xactimate, there's ton because we also teach
Yeah.
Xactimate level 1, 2, and 3.
It's awesome.
We have a certified trainer on staff. And we're getting ready to launch our SFY University, which is teaching people how to write estimates, how to document a lost property, how to create a systematic approach to stuff. But Symbility has so whoever helped bring on would literally have to pioneer their own training path, and
Yep.
that's a very unique individual. Most people don't have that skill set where they figure it out on their own. So it's kind of
Exactly.
a
So
yeah.
this seems interesting topic, and I think it kind of goes into overcoming that small business mindset. But wouldn't creating a university to teach people how to write their own estimates cannibalize your existing estimating business?
Yeah, so that's a great. A lot of people ask me this, right? And even within my own company, people are like, "Bro, dude, like you're gonna share like all your secrets." And first, so I don't think there's that many actual real secrets in the world today, like with Google and YouTube and like you could find the information. It's just whether how hard you're gonna look and go figure that information out. But I find that being in a position as a company my size is being able to help companies at all phases of their growth, right? So you have companies at phase 1, they have like themselves and maybe 2 helpers, right? So it's like a team of 3 people. They maybe do $300,000 in work if they're doing great, maybe 4, like whatever. And they need someone to help write their estimates for them. And then now let's say they move from this kind of size to, let's say, $1 million company, right? They have $1 million, let's say 5, 6 employees, and they're looking to have an in-house estimator, right? So this allows me to help train their in-house estimator to become good and great at what they're doing. And then you move from this particular size to, let's say, a $3 to $5 million company, and now they have a couple estimators, but there's just sometimes work that's overflow for them.
Yep.
And we could help be the overflow. The other side that a university does, it actually shows that we're the actual experts in the space by teaching, and that you really understand what you're doing, because there's a lot of people that say they know what they're doing and they really don't know what they're doing. And that's probably, I here one of our core values at SFY is always be learning. So I'm a big fan. Like, hey, look, I don't know everything.
Yep.
You know something how to do something better? Let me know. Like,
Oh yeah.
I want to know. I'm also like a big fan. Like when you go to shows and conferences, like I want to grab one nugget from this speaker. Like I want to grab this one nugget, and I want to grab this one nugget from this other speaker. And I'm not looking for these giant, behemoth like nuggets that I'm like, oh, this is going to transform my life. But if I find enough of these little ones, then it is right, and I can really implement those things in my company to make it better.
Yep.
And I find that's very true in life. The more learning mindset we have, the better off we are. And coaching and teaching is just the next phase of when you're growing a company. How do you help become more of a voice in the space and help people grow and develop? That's another big spot. The other side, I actually understand, like when you have a company, I don't know, staffing, right? So I mean, we have 65, 70 employees. So I've gone through a few employee staff members. So I know that you're going to train your individual, and you're going to go through and you're going to spend 6 months training them.
Yep.
And there's going to be something that happens, right? Like things happen, and you're going to end up letting that individual go, and you're going to need to do it again.
Yep.
And you're just, it's part of growing a company. Like you're going to hire and retrain people, and they're not going to work out, and you're going to have to find someone else. And that's
Absolutely.
that's part of business growth. I know some people get frustrated with that process, but that's how you find good people that work for you.
Yeah. I mean, the ideal is always too good to be true, that you're going to find that person that maybe comes from a different restoration company that just
Yep.
knows everything, and you're just going to be plug and play. You're going to hire them, and then day one, you're going to give them a pen, a paper, an iPad, and a phone, and
Right.
maybe some other cool tools, and then they're just going to magically make your pains go away. But 9 times out of 10, that's not the case, right?
No,
So,
it really isn't.
no.
Everyone's the plug and play employee is such a rare
Yeah.
find. Like
Yep.
if you found like 4 of those like back to back, you should go buy a lotto ticket. Like you should just go buy a lotto ticket. Like it's just
Well, and the other thing, and we'll get into the overcoming small business mindset, but in big business mindset, you need to be focusing on growing the people that are going to be growing your business, right? So just because you
right.
find somebody plug and play that's a great estimator doesn't mean you should stop there. You should still be training
Right.
that person and growing that person, so that way eventually they can be, I don't know, your estimating manager or your estimating
Yep.
leader or something like that, right? So
Yeah.
cool. So
Yeah.
when we were brainstorming, what are we going to talk about on this podcast? What's very valuable on this podcast? You mentioned that one of the biggest problems that you've seen within restoration versus roofing is that restoration business owners typically struggle to overcome the small business mindset. And
Yeah.
I would say I kind of agree with you, and I'm interested to see which direction we both go. But if we look at,
Right.
what I really respect about roofing companies is the fact that they are very business oriented, and a lot of roofing companies in the insurance damage space, explode. I mean, we're talking about 5 to 10 years, they get to, 8 figures, like 20, 30, 40, 50.
Yeah.
And then you look at the
Yeah.
average fire and water restoration company, we're talking about a lot of small mom and pop shops. Service might be a little bit better on the fire and water side, like there's pros there, but clearly a lot more small business mindset. So what comes on your mind when we're saying overcoming this, and what are common problems or common trends to see if somebody has a small business mindset? Let's start unpacking this.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're both of us are on the benefit of seeing both sides of the industry, right? So I think this gives us a better insight in watching companies grow. Where I think in the water mitigation space, since they don't see this growth on an ongoing basis, they don't know it's even possible. I mean, I know companies that'll start a roofing company in May, right? And they'll do $1 million, $2 million a year easily. I mean, just
by like December, right? Because they don't even
yeah,
have the whole
yeah,
season, like 9
yeah,
months.
by December, right? And to hear of a water restoration company do that is just almost like
Yep.
unheard of.
Yep.
Now there are a few things I think that help the roofing space accomplish that goal, but there is I think they grind harder out in the door-to-door sales side. So a lot of them have more of a sales grind hustle mindset than a customer oriented office administrative mindset. So most of the owners that own roofing companies are sales driven, or they were number one sales at their previous roofing company that they worked at, and they started their own. And so I think they drive harder and they grind the doors harder.
Yep.
And where I think the water space, they don't grind the doors as hard. And I use, prime example, I talk to owners all the time, and they're like, yeah, I do my own estimates. I do then I'm like, oh, do you do your own? Oh, I do my own accounting too. Like, oh, you probably do your own marketing. Yeah, I do my own marketing, right? And I'm like, okay, this is great. I was like, and I'm certainly sure, like you just kind of list all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, so you're doing all these things versus a mindset of a roofer would be, okay, they're not going to do their own accounting. Like that's probably the first thing that they don't do is their own accounting, and they bring in someone to help in the office administrative stuff. So those are probably the first two things that are passed off, and they'll go spend time knocking the doors, right? So they'll go outside knocking doors and generating business and revenue. Now, if you take that same type of mindset over to the water space, if the guy didn't do his accounting, right? So let's say it takes an hour or two to do the accounting, get all the invoices and all that type of stuff done. And so let's say for the next 6 months, every day for 2 hours, he goes visits 2 hotels.
Yep.
Right? Like, every day, like how many hotels are there's tons of hotels, right?
Exactly.
And building relationship with hotels or property management companies or apartment complexes, or like, and you list whatever, right? And you go out and you meet and greet people, right? Like, hey, look, I'm gonna go meet 2 people a day, right? And we're not talking huge numbers here. I mean, we're talking 2, 3, you know, businesses. But if you start multiplying that over time, you'll
Mhm.
begin to see huge revenue. Hey, look, I met that one guy, I met Alex. He was great, dude. He had a great attitude. We gelled together, like, dude, like, he loves my same football team and whatever. Our kids are the same age, and and that stuff really connects with people. And then when a loss happens, then you have an opportunity to fulfill that, right? And a lot of people love to do the larger projects, like a hotel, like a bathtub, guest falls asleep, bathtub overflows and floods 9 different rooms and 3 floors below it, right? And you're slammed busy then. And then,
Yep.
or you get an apartment complex, and you're constantly being called out for those types of things. And I think that's where people are missing it, where a roofer looks at, I'm not losing money, right? So I think when they're hiring their accountant, they don't look at it as, I'm losing this money paying the accountant. They look at it
Mhm.
as, I have an opportunity to grow and I'm going to go make more money. Where in the water space, they look at it as, I lost this money because I'm not doing it,
Yep.
right? Like, I'm paying, someone, I don't know, let's say $150 a week to do my accounting, or $200 a week to do my accounting. I'm losing $200 a week because I'm not doing my own accounting. Instead of, I have the opportunity to land a $200,000 job, a
Yeah.
$100,000 job, a $50,000 job, right? And those are things that help shift you to the next phase. And if they worked on that, they could end up hitting the growth curve and the growth numbers
Yeah.
on that.
So like that concept I would call like buying back your time is essentially what you're
Okay.
doing.
Yep.
If you're spending $200 a week on that account, and you're buying back those hours that it takes you to do that, right? And then you're using that time to actually grow and scale your business. So the quicker,
Right.
like my first advice if somebody wants to grow a big business is get yourself out of the business, right? Get
Yep.
yourself out of the trenches as quickly as possible. Like obviously it's not possible at the very beginning, but the sooner you can get yourself out of doing the work, estimating the work, dealing with adjusters, all
Mm-hmm.
this, streamline the process, and then the more time you could focus on building your business, the best. And like, yeah, that roofing owner is gonna spend a lot of time the first year probably just focusing on door knocking and outsource
Right.
everything else out, right? But eventually they're probably going to stop doing that too once they
Yep.
get to a certain size. And then they're going to focus just on, how do I get people motivated? How do I get people,
Mm-hmm.
working and beating to the same drum and, walking towards my vision? So I think it's very important for restorers who want to grow big businesses. And the number one reason we had success is I was always pro buying back my time. Like, what is
Right.
not worth my time? What somebody else can do. And the other thing is, how well can you do your accounting, and how well can an accountant do your accounting,
Right.
right? And that's an eye opener
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah. When you're like, it took me, 4 or 6 hours to do it, and your accountant got it done in a half hour, you're like,
yeah, yep,
maybe they really know what's going on, because they'll bring process and systems, right? If it's not your
yep,
skill set, it's going to take you forever. And
exactly,
there's, I actually, I know my accounting pretty well, but I have accounts that do, I don't do any of it, and I'm not interested. Like, it's just, now I keep
exactly,
in top of my numbers, but
yep.
like,
Yeah,
you
and
got
it's
to
a good
pass that
check and
stuff off.
balance too, right? Like to have somebody else do. Like if you screw up, you have that bias. If you think the business is
Right.
going bad, you might screw up your books, and then your books look like the business is confirming that bias, right? If you think it's going good,
Right.
it could work opposite, right? So,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you think about this, but like our consultant would ask us an almost rhetorical question all the time, and the question was, Alex, would you rather have a $10 million business with a 10% bottom line, or a $5 million business with a 20% bottom line, right? And
Yep.
the answer rhetorically would be, you want the $5 million business with a 20% bottom line because it's the same $1 million that you're bottom lining. Why would you want $10 million
Yep.
worth of responsibility? Do you agree with that, or
Right.
do you disagree with that?
I actually agree with that.
You agree with that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think higher profit margins yield a better chance for growth correctly. And
Okay.
when you have a $10 million company, you can move your profit margins, but if you already started at the 20% profit margin, it's easier to maintain that growing up. Now,
Yep.
obviously, everyone always thinks if I have a 20% profit margin, I double, I'm going to have 20% profit margin going up. That's usually not the case. Like it's extremely rare that happens that way, because the bigger you get, the more overhead you have,
Yep.
because you need upper management, and upper management costs money, right? They're not
Mm-hmm.
in like they're expensive. So um, there's a book I like that I read is called Profit First.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever heard the book or whatever, but
Heard of
it
it. Yep.
basically talks about basically paying yourself first, and how
Mm-hmm.
we as business owners, we always reverse the direction. So we take expenses and the labor costs and all the other stuff, and whatever's down at the bottom is the profit.
Yep.
And so this reverses the other way. Say, hey, look, what do you want your profit to be? So all your income comes in. You take out your top profit line, whatever it is. Let's just say 10%. You remove 10% from the budget, and you have to force everything else to work within the 90%. And it forces you to look at things different. And there's just like, if let's say I'm interested in upgrading my software to something different, like, or
Mm-hmm.
a new marketing plan. Well,
Mm-hmm.
if I only have XYZ, then I won't execute it because it's not in the bank account. But if I
Mm-hmm.
had the other 10% in there, the decision, oh, I can actually execute it because it's in the bank account, I can spend that money. Um, and I think that's uh, where I think when you look at like models going to like a $10 million company, forcing the profit to exist down to like a 12% or 15% gets hard, because when you're that big, to squeeze that back down again, it just takes time, right? So it's typically at that point, it's usually staffing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's marketing stuff, but usually when you get that size, it's most of the time staffing, and marketing and some of those things, unless you're buying buildings and things like that. But that's a
Yep.
that's a different side of it. So I
So
mean, what do you think? Do you think the other way, or do you prefer a bigger company?
So here's what I think's important, right? And I think there's certain metrics in that example that weren't given that paints a different picture. So let's
Right.
assume that both companies have the same cost of goods sold, right? So they're both as
Okay.
efficient in producing the work, right? And the
Okay.
reason the $10 million company has a lower bottom line is that they are spending a lot more into what we would call reinvesting profits. But you're not like actually
Okay.
reinvesting profits, right? You have a couple more staff members because you have a aggressive growth trajectory. So what do I mean by that?
Right.
Right? If that $10 million company is growing, let's just say 50 to 60% year over year, and we're anticipating that growth to keep going, we probably might have an extra estimator on staff. And they might not be at full
Right.
capacity, but we have them onboarded and trained for the next year, right? We probably always have an extra salesperson that's ramping up and things like those, right?
Right.
So the delta of that extra 10% are strategic expenses that help the company grow, right? And in
Mm-hmm.
that sense, I would prefer the $10 million company with a 10%
Yep.
bottom line, because that company, as long as I'd say that company has a high year over year growth multiple. And the reason
Yep.
behind that is if you have a high year over year growth multiple, you're going to be a lot more attractive when it comes to selling in the future, right?
Yep.
And you're creating a lot more value for you at the exit as a business owner
Mm-hmm.
than you are taking dividends year over year out of the business, right? And I actually
Yep.
did a model to where there was like a company that was growing 30 or 20%, or it was growing 30% month over month with a 20% bottom line, year over year with a 20% bottom line. So it
Okay.
was like within a 10-year span, it was growing to like $8 million. And then I did a company that was bleeding 10% every single year, but grew
Okay.
from zero to $35 million of revenue. And then I took
Okay.
into account the fact that that company bleeding lost about $9 million during that period of time. And then I took into
Right.
fact that the company that did that $8 million, I'll put the graphic below, but the company that
Yeah.
did $8 million took out $5 million worth of profit from the business during that time span of 10 years. But the company
Okay.
that sold, that was doing $35 million of revenue, sold for close to $70 million. So that sale price, because within that 10-year span, they heavily reinvested and they rapidly grew,
Right.
it was worth every penny compared to the small percentage of dividends that the owner was taking back on the $8 million company. So what I'm trying to outline here is, yes, is profit very important? And yes, like you said, the book outlined it, it is very important, but it all
Right.
depends on what your strategy is. And
True.
sometimes profit can be reinvested And you can even go in the negative and be justifiable as long as they are expenses that are growing the business, and as long as your growth rate is significantly higher, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Growth is super expensive. A lot of people don't understand the
Yeah.
cost of growth. The cost to get to, the cost to go from, let's say, a $500,000 to a $2 million company, and the staffing, the resources to get there is expensive.
Yeah.
Because the most expensive cost, most people don't really understand the cost. Like, until you get bigger in labor costs, you don't understand the cost of training an individual is very high.
Yep.
For me, to take someone from ground zero to become an estimator, takes me 8 months.
Wow.
8 months of true training. Now, they do other things in the company, add some value, but for them to become what I would call a solid, good estimator takes me 8 months.
Yep.
And so if you take 8 months of investment of someone's salary, I mean, you're like, okay, and you start multiplying that times 3 or 4, and then let's say they quit, it's not going to work out 5 months down the road, because it just, happens, right? This isn't the job for them. They don't like it, or they just, they found something else or whatever. Like, that stuff happens. And then you start like, oh, that money's completely sunk and gone, and you got to reinvest it, right? And that's where you get into the negatives. That's where most people don't understand. That's why the most reason people go get capital is to help curve that cost of growth, the growth cost of what it costs to develop the team to where it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like you said, let's say it takes 6 months, right? And let's say the average employee is 100,000 just arbitrarily. And you're at $3 million a year, and you want to grow to 6 the following year, and you need 10 more employees to do that, which sounds totally reasonable, right? Well, that's about $300,000 that you're eating out of your net profit this year, so that way you can grow into what you want to be next year, right? $300,000 for a $3 million company is 10% of their bottom line that they're eating. I wouldn't be so worried about that, because now you've got those 10 employees, and some of those people are going to help in sales and marketing. Some of them are going to help in production, stuff like that. And without those 10 employees, you can't go next year and do $6 million. You can't. No. Even if you just hire the salespeople, you're going to run out of production capacity, right? So it's all kind of tied together. So that's kind of like big business mindset. Like Uber, for example, to date is not profitable. Let me throw another example.
Actually, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Most companies on the stock market that we invest in are not profitable. So if we think about like companies that we invest in, typically people with an aggressive risk appetite do not invest in high dividend stocks, right? We could agree with that.
Right.
High dividend stocks are mostly you're towards the end of your retirement portfolio, and you're going to put your money into high dividend stocks, right?
Right.
Well, why do all these companies not have dividends, right? Because they're not making money, right? But we still invest in them because the value of that company is going up and up and up and up. Big business mentality isn't necessarily give the stakeholders money today. It's create value for tomorrow, right?
Right.
And I think restorers that want to overcome the small business mindset, yes, I'm not saying profitability is not important. I'm not saying go and just spend money and grow this unhealthy, unstructured company. What I'm saying, though, is be very focused on the future value that you create as opposed to the temporarily value that you're bringing in right now. So
no, I agree. It's interesting someone actually grasps the concepts of big growth and understand the cost of team members to get you there. And I think let's go back to a small company, right? So let's take a small company that's interested in growing. So you're at a 3-man band, right? That's a very common shop, or 5 people max. At some point, you need to trust someone in your company to do roles and responsibilities that you're doing, right? And I think I've been there. Like, I've been there, where you're not taking a paycheck because you need every penny to make the business work, and anything extra you're spending, you're like, man, I get the concept. Like, I'm losing $200 a week. Like, I get that, but the other side is, you have to start looking at, like, I gotta sell and grow and make this like part of my growth opportunity. If I don't figure out this puzzle piece of how to grow the company, you'll always be small, right? And that's why most owners I think should focus on the growth and sell of revenue generating income side of it. And if you don't do that, then you need to find someone that can do that for you. It usually costs a lot. Like really good salespeople are just expensive, and marketing, like it's just the nature of the thing. It's probably only position in any organization is sales that can pretty much almost make as much as the owner of a company.
Oh yeah.
Like they're just that valuable to an organization in growing and where they need to go.
Yep.
But when you get to the point of passing off the accounting to someone, then it frees your time up, right? And that's how you get to the next phase. And then you focus on something different. Now, if you pass off the accounting and you don't focus on anything, then that's a you problem. That's
Yep.
you not taking the time to grow the company to the next phase, or talking to people to help you get to the confidence to go. Let's say I'm uncomfortable. I don't know who to talk to at the hotel. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I don't even know. Like, like I've only worked with homeowners. Like, I have no idea. They're gonna ask all these questions. And this is part of, for me. So in school, I sucked at school, right? I was horrible at school. I read backwards, had dyslexia, had like, in third grade, I'm going to my teachers to ask for makeup tests because I wanted to pass third grade. Like, and my parents are coaching me how to talk to my teacher, right? So failure was like for me, like an ongoing thing in life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, go to a hotel, fail at
Yeah.
trying to land an account, right? Like you're like,
I mean, what's going to happen? There's two things that are going to happen. One, you land a hotel and you're excited.
right.
Or two, they
Yeah.
tell you to F off and you learn. Okay.
Yeah.
See ya.
And it's not like you didn't have a hotel before, right? So you weren't landing a hotel, right? Like, so
Exactly.
you have no hotel business.
Yep.
And if they say no, okay, so you're no better, you're not any worse than where you were before, right? The only opportunity is you have a chance to get better, right? Well, they're going to ask for this, I don't know if I have the right general liability policy and some of these other things. Okay, ask. Most people are more willing to share information. Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, look, just so you know, like when we're working with contractors, they need to have these particular things, and this is how this works out. Okay. Do you mind if I look at that? Like, that's a little new. I'm kind of interested to see what this looks like, and then be like, well, hey, most of our contractors know what. Well, yeah, I'm a little newer in this, and this is why you would be interested in me because I'm a little smaller and I'm hungry for your business.
Yep.
And I'd be like a phone call away. I'm the guy you want to work with, unless you want to call, you want to call someone at 2 a.m. to see on a Sunday, see who's going to come out to fix your water leak. Probably no, and they're probably going to stay until tomorrow or the next day. I have an opportunity to get here right away, right? So you can sell your small side of the business
Yeah.
to it, right? Just like wherever you are. Yeah,
Worry
and that's
about
where I
the-
think people need to get.
Yeah, worry about the issues later. Like, go get the sale
Yeah.
first, and then I am
Yep.
sure when you're put on the spot and you have to get this job, but you have to get an insurance policy, I'm sure you'll figure out how to go to your agent and figure that out, right? Get the yes
Yeah,
first, right? And then the rest is like, it's crazy. Like, we were two guys in a truck, me and my dad in a truck out of a garage selling fires at fire chasing, right? And I didn't
Right.
know what I was doing. I was 18 and a half at the time, like, I was shocked that, like, now looking back, I was shocked that anybody would buy from me, but whatever, right? But I was just kind of like, okay, cool, I'm here, I'm gonna try to sell the fire, and then we got a couple big fires, and it's like, now what do? We have no subcontractors, we have none of this, we have none of that.
Right.
How are we gonna do this, right? And we figured it out, and at the end, like, now looking back, it was a great growing experience, right?
Yeah.
So, I think fear of failure affects people all the time, and even at Albi,
yeah.
right? Like, we're afraid that we're not going to get investors. We're not going to make people happy, whatever. And, like, sometimes you just take a step back and be like, okay, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? Okay, we don't
Right.
get that hotel. We lose that customer. Okay, so? So, but yeah, this is really nice.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
these podcasts because we can just jam about this kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, it's and it's I like trying to see how to help people become to the bigger mindset, and there's freedom from it. I mean, staying at the small business mindset, man, the amount of stress that's at that level when you're doing everything is just huge, right? Like, it's draining. Like people don't realize over time it takes you longer to do the same task because you're just stressed out, right? Things are going through your head. Like, let's say accounting, you're doing accounting, and then something comes up, a text comes up, and you're like, oh my God, I still have yet this thing to deal with. Like, I haven't gotten this done, right? And you literally stop the one task and you're pondering how to solve this other solution. and then you go back to maybe doing some accounting and something else, and it's just the interruption. And then at the end of the day, you're like eating dinner or cooking, and you're like, man, I have all this work still yet to do, and it's like you got to learn like how to pass some of that responsibility off to someone else, and entrust them. Like I have a big rule, like you can't ever give someone authority, or you can't ever give someone a responsibility without giving them the authority to do the decision.
Yep.
And then from that, then you correct the decisions that they make. Now, what does this leave? A lot of people are like, well, they could burn you. That's 100% correct. 100% correct. But you won't ever get to a big company until you get burned a few times. As much as I hate to say it, you're going to get burned. Someone's going to do something wrong. And you have one or two options. Is the burn so bad that you need to let them go? Or B, is it not that bad that I can coach and train them and have them become better, right? Because the only way they're going to get there is unless you give them the responsibility and the consequences that go with it, and help them coach to become better, to be a team player on your team.
Yep.
And you'll never get to huge. You'll never do $5 million without having a solid office person, having a solid accounting, having someone great in marketing, or sales, or lead technician. And the lead technician makes a huge mistake and just screws up everything, and you're like, man, why did you make that decision? But then it's like, okay, as a leader, that means I need to come in and either I need to coach and redevelop him and tell him the why of why I would have made a decision different, and how come, and how did you come to your decision, right? And dissect the thought process of that. Or you're like, hey, look, the decision's so bad, like you'll have to let him go, right? And you have to find someone new, and that's just part of growth. Like I know everyone's all afraid of this, but that's how you get to $5 million. Like any you talk to any company that builds anything, they're gonna have a story. Someone did this, they burned me here, did whatever, I had to let them go, and you know what? They had to find someone else to fill that same spot again, and trust again, and let that go, because otherwise you'll never get there. Otherwise you go back to being the super stressed out small business shop, and I don't want to be that.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, once you do it once or twice or three times, you just kind of get used to it. Like, I mean, at first, firing people, I hated. I was a people pleaser. Now, it's just kind of a conversation that you have if it's not a good fit. And 9 times out of 10, if you're a good leader and you've done things properly, when you sit down and say, hey, I don't know if this is a good fit, 9 times out of 10, I've seen that the response from the employee is like, yeah, I agree. I don't think this is a good fit. Because you've already gone through and tried to coach, you try to fix, so on and so forth, and it's not working. So, but cool, awesome.
I agree.
Any last comments on overcoming the small business mindset, Greg?
I think we talked a little bit about it, but the failing fast and learn from it. Yeah. Right. The faster you fail, the faster you learn, the faster you grow. Yeah. And I know a lot of people are just, you're going to spend, I've done it. I've spent $5,000-$10,000 in marketing. Literally. It's like I took the money and flushed it right down the toilet. Didn't go anywhere. Literally just did nothing, right? It's just, but you know what? I learned from it. And I grow and I move on, right? And well, it took forever to get, I get it. Everyone does it. Everyone loses money in marketing. Everyone fail fast, learn, and then go at it again. Fail again, learn, and you become quicker. You become better at it. You see things quicker, and you'll start crushing it.
Yeah, the SpaceX documentary on Netflix actually was a big moment for me. They were building the rockets and they exploded. Elon and his team were building rockets. Right. They exploded after the launch. And the third time they were almost about to do it, it exploded again. Everybody was like, "Oh my God, Elon's going to be pissed. He put his whole life savings into this." He was literally draining I think billions of dollars into this operation, right? And he brought everybody in the room and said, "Hey, good job. We got it next time." And everybody was like, "What? We just burnt billions of dollars. This is never going to work." And then afterwards it ended up working, right? So I mean, if billions of dollars could be lost on projects, I'm pretty sure you could lose $5,000 on small business marketing, right? So yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great, man. So well, this was awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, this was amazing.
Great chit chatting.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the Albi After Hours Live podcast. For those of you who are watching and like this, give us a like, subscribe. You can add me on Facebook or LinkedIn. You can find Greg also on Facebook or LinkedIn as well. We'll put the links down below. But yeah, this was awesome. Thanks for coming on the show, Greg.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was great.